Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm No02, and today I am continuing my complete guide to Bright Sands, where I go through every single major location and go in depth into the area as far as loot, PvE, PvP, as well as any interesting place that you can sort of climb on top of or maneuver through and things like that. Basic tips and tricks. As you can see here, we are at the Woodcutters Camp, and we are someplace that you're not supposed to. So at the end of this video, be sure to check the timestamps. The timestamps will have the whole video broken down very nice and neat. But at the end of this video, I will show you how you can get up here in your own online gameplay. First, let's start off with the loot. When it comes to loot, I view it in three ways. There are the notable or key loot that spawns in this area. Then there are the loot containers that spawns in the area. Then after that, what loot hard spawns onto the ground? Or what I mean by hard spawns is like what loot is just sort of in the environment, on the ground or on shelves, stuff like that. Loot that doesn't spawn specifically into a container. So notable loot, right? We're at the Woodcutters Camp, and it's no surprise you will find lumber here. That is one of the key items that you will find here, lumber. It's not the only place that you can find lumber. You can find lumber at the wherever there's coolers, technically, particularly at the Waterfall Labs. But the most notable loot here is the lumber. The second most is the fertilizer. But you can also find, interestingly enough, sample containers here as well. Those are the three primary pieces of loot that might entice you to come here. If you're looking for those things, this is actually a decent place to find any one of those three things. Next, what loot containers spawn here? This is very simple. Very simple. There's only two loot containers that spawn, oh, I'm sorry, three loot containers that spawn here naturally. That is a single civilian locker, a single box of ammo, and then a bunch of coolers. Coolers everywhere. The only exception to that, and reason why I want to break this apart, is that there is the tall house key. I'll show you inside. Inside the tall house key here, though, you can see we have a weapon crate, a medical case, a consumable case, and another ammo box. And that is all of the lootable containers in this particular area. On top of this bed for the tall house, you can find armor and weapon attachments. Now, when it comes to loose spawn, items that loose spawn in this area are lumber, fertilizer, sample containers. There's one loose spawn for ammo. Then there are the generic construction materials. Those spawn literally everywhere. They also spawn here. So it's going to be like your hydraulic pistons, your ball bearings, hardened metals, metallic alloys, insulation, all that stuff, all that very generic sort of construction buildy stuff. That spawns here. I'll show you where exactly. And also, notably, there are two weapon spawns here, and I'll show you. So let's start going through exactly where all the loot is, potentially. So here is the one ammo spawn right here on top of the tall house. The key into the tall house. Down here we have lumber hard spawning in the area. We have a cooler right here. Double fertilizer across the sky. More fertilizer. The general rule of thumb that I found in the Woodcutters Camp is that if there's something man-made, there's probably loot spawning on it or around it. Another cooler down here. Loot can hard spawn on all of this on top of the crate and stuff like that. We will run over here. Hopefully the PvE hasn't respawned, but it probably has. So again, man-made thing. Loot on the ground. Got ourselves a rattler. So something man-made, loot will spawn on the ground. We'll go into this house next. Another cooler. Lots of lumber, as you can see. Here are some shelves on the ground where the generic construction materials will spawn. This is the primary place where these things will spawn. You can find your hardened metals and pistons and things like that, ball bearings on the shelf, top and bottom, and what have you. Ooh, I forgot to mention, and most notably, pale ivy blossom spawns here. Pale ivy blossom spawns here. You can see this sort of leafage, this foliage that's going through the ground. All of that, as far as I can tell, is a potential pale ivy blossom spawn. So, kind of neat. Here's our one civilian locker. Nothing fancy in it. Another potential spawn for the pale ivy blossom. I find them in front of this tractor, just like that. Stuff can spawn on top of these crates here, as well as on the ground around this tractor. Here's another cooler with a sample container in it, quite nice. This building right here is like feast or famine. I've found like 8 things in this building, and sometimes you find 2. I don't know what's up with the spawns here, or maybe I had weird RNG or something looted before me, but there's a hydraulic piston. You can have like 2 or 3 things spawn on top of that countertop, a couple of things on the ground. You can have easily 3 or 4 things spawn on the countertop and on the ground right here. Get out of here. As well as have stuff spawn on the table, on the bench. Not a whole lot going on in here. So one of the 2 weapon spawns, though, right here on this bench. One of the 2 weapon spawns is on that bench right there. I do want to note, though, that in this area, I tend to find that the weapons are rusty. And if you don't know this, when you find weapons in World, in particular, the basic weapons, the, like, what is it, the Spitfire Auto or whatever, the PDW, the generic shotgun, the trench gun, all those common weapons, they have the chance to spawn in the world rusty. And I tend to find them here usually rusty. And the weapon will say in its description, that it's seen better days and it's not at peak performance. And so the rusty weapons all have less armor penetration on them. Keep that in mind. That bench weapon spawn. Some more lumber on the ground, right? Another man-made little area. Lots of lumber spawns. I found pale ivy blossoms in that little corner right there before. Lumber. Here's one of our last coolers, I believe. And then, again, fertilizer, lumber. The Woodcutters Camp. We kind of know what's up. And then this is the last area that we're going to loot. This is where the ammo box is. See right here? Ammo box. Bit of ammo in there. Some generic materials can spawn on these shelves. On the chairs. I believe on this shelf as well. On this bed, you can find weapon attachments. And I find that on this bed right here is another weapon spawn. The second weapon spawn that I was talking about. That's about all we got going on here. You can enter into here for some reason and climb up and do stuff. And I don't know. I always check that area thinking there's going to be loot there, and there's just never loot there. I've never seen a gun spawn inside this crate, though in theory it could. And that's it. That's it for the loot here. Not a whole lot going on, as you can see, and the loot's very, very specific. On to PvE. There are typically 3 groups of PvE that spawn here in the Woodcutters Camp. There's typically always a group at the tall house. The tall house will have anywhere between like 2 to 4 creatures. Almost always one of them is a rattler, and the rest will be like 2 or 3 striders. The other group of PvE spawns over there by that far building. It's typically somewhere between 2 to 3 creatures. Usually it's striders, but occasionally you'll find rattlers mixed into the group. The third group of PvE sort of spawns around this area, and they'll patrol into the house and sort of in this general area. Just a little bit. That is also typically striders, but occasionally there'll be a rattler mixed in, and that's somewhere between 2 to 3 or 4 creatures as well. There's plenty of things to jump on top of and climb on. Nothing really too sneaky or game-breaking that we can do as far as farming them. There's plenty of high ground to just jump and climb on top of to deal with them. Nothing too dramatic. And that's about it. That's about it as far as dealing with the PvE here. For the most part, if you want to sneak past them, this sort of center path right here that leads to the Waterfall Labs, usually things aren't too close to it, so if you walk and avoid eye contact, which is how you deal with all animals, you can usually sneak past them. The last bit that I want to talk about is, we got two more things. PvP still, and then the how to climb up on top of stuff. For PvP, I actually really enjoy fighting in this area. There's a lot of cover. There's a lot of opportunity to break line of sight. So, you're in a fight or something, right, and you're going pew, pew, pew. You can very easily sort of break line of sight, and change the positions and maneuver and get in here, get a different angle and shoot, and then get away and run up here and get a new angle. There's a lot of potential here for outflanking, outmaneuvering, potentially outplaying your opponents here. I really like fighting here. There's a lot of mobility potential here. The next thing I need to talk about is the tires. All of the tires on all of the tractor things are pretty decent headshot angles. As you can see, the tire blocks most of our body, but we can see over the top of it and shoot our gun. And so, of course, each of the tires will offer a different angle on something else. Rider Buena. So, of course, each of the tires will offer a different angle on different areas. But if somebody's pushing you or something scares you, something's going on, you can get behind pretty much any of these tires and see your opponent, and your opponent can really only see your head for the most part. The majority of your body will be obscured. So all of these tires are really nice headshot angles. So just keep in mind that these are great places to take cover behind and then peek up and get an angle on something. Kind of cool. And what I showed earlier is, of course, you can get in here, be in the dark, and get angles on the front gate, as well as the tower. The last bit for PvP, this is the only dumpster that is empty, that we can sort of comfortably get inside of, and then if you crouch, again, not quite as good as the tire headshot angle, but pretty good chunk of cover for us, and we can see the front gate and be up to the tower. And be mostly behind cover and kind of obscured by the bushes and by the foliage and stuff like that, the flora. Another thing to note too is these trees have holes in them. Potentially you can use the trees as some cover as well. When it comes to climbing stuff now, we're moving on. That's about it for PvP. When it comes to climbing stuff and getting weird angles, there's only two that I'm going to show you here. Most of it's straightforward. We can get on pretty much all of these rocks, but I find that over here. Very, very easy. Jump on top of this stump. Jump over here. And we jump over here. And we climb up. And now we are on this rock that separates the Woodcutters Camp and the Waterfall Labs. And we can see the collection point and this entire field. And sometimes a meteorite likes to land in the lake right here. We can see all of that very comfortably. And run down this rock and see all of this part of the lake as well. That's that's probably the most notable bit of cover that you can climb on top of. There's like some of these trees, like these mushroom head trees that we can actually get on top of. Further down there, there's really no value to doing so, and once you're up there, it's actually rather hard to get down. And so the last bit here I'm going to show you is the clearly out of bounds area that I was at. So keep in mind, this area that I'm about to show you, that I was at, is very obviously and very clearly not intended for us players to be up there. In fact, once you're up there, you can go all the way down to the edge of the map, and you can jump off of the map and get underneath the map. There's nothing out there, you get trapped. And the fall would kill you on an online match, but it just sort of goes to show that the devs did not intend for us to be up here. But please don't abuse this power. I'm doing this for fun and for the sake of science, and just sort of showing you how we can use the geometry and how broken climbing is in this game right now. We're at the tower here. Climb on top of that. Mantle on top of this. Climb on top of this. We are aiming sort of down there. We're going to sprint along this antenna and jump and sort of... Oh, we missed. How embarrassing. It was a bad jump. It was a bad jump. And of course, if you miss the jump, you die. So embarrassing. Sorry, guys. Do the climb. We do the climb. Again, aiming for that right there. Man. Feels bad, man. I think it's literally the first 2 times that I've failed this jump. I can mantle spam up this rock. Get over here. Get up here. But you get the point. I need to prove it to you. I need to prove it to you. There we go. This fall can take anywhere between 25 and 50 points of damage from you when you do it right. Then we just climb up. Very obvious things that we can mantle on top of here. We just mantle. And here we are. Here we are where I started the video, full circle. You can take this rock all the way down and get an angle on like Vaccine Labs, as well as look down some of the holes that overlook the Eastern Caverns, as well as look into the collection point. Not a whole lot of value of being up here, really. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you for watching me fall a couple of times. I am also human, and I will see you in the future.